Students, you are welcome to this virtual class. This is Dr. Shashibala and I'll teach you the subject Income Tax Law. All of you have heard of what is a tax. Whenever we go to the market, whenever we do any purchasing, we all have heard of tax and we all pay taxes. जब भी हम मार्केट में कोई चीज़ खरीदने जाते हैं या हम किसी रेस्टोरेंट किसी होटल में जाते हैं तो when we look at the price and the price always includes certain taxes. Now what is a tax? ये टैक्स होता क्या है? Before going into details as regards various provisions of income tax law, first of all understand what is a tax. Tax as per definition is a compulsory payment. Now, it is a compulsory payment means it's not a voluntary payment nor any donation. It is a financial charge imposed on individuals or legal entities by the government as per its legislative authority. Now, what does it mean? It is a financial charge. It means that you have to pay in terms of money, and this financial charge is imposed on individuals or legal entities. Means individuals have to pay taxes and various organizations have to pay taxes, and this charge is imposed by the government. सरकार ये टैक्सेस लगाती है और कोई इंडिविजुअल और कोई ऑर्गेनाइजेशन टैक्स नहीं लगा सकती. And government imposes this financial charge as per its legislative authority. Means that tax is imposed by an act or by certain law enacted under the parliament or under state legislature. Next, taxpayer cannot demand any immediate return, which means that taxpayer cannot demand anything in return. He or she has to pay the amount of tax, but we cannot demand anything in return for that payment. Next is failure to pay tax is punishable under law. इसका क्या मतलब हुआ कि अगर हम टैक्सेस पे नहीं करते हैं तो हमें लॉ के मुताबिक कोई भी फाइन या इम्प्रिजनमेंट के फॉर्म में पनिशमेंट मिलेगी. The proceeds from taxes constitute a major source of revenue to the government. Now, when we all know that the government has to make different types of expenses in the form of construction of roads and bridges, in the form of building of schools, colleges, hospitals. So government has to carry out many types of social activities for the welfare of the society. For all these things, from where the government is to get money, गवर्नमेंट इन सारे कामों के लिए पैसा कहाँ से लेगी? तो दैट मनी कम्स फ्रॉम द अमाउंट ऑफ टैक्सेस कलेक्टेड फ्रॉम द पब्लिक एंड वेरियस ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस. Hugh Dalton has given the definition of tax. He says, a tax is a compulsory contribution imposed by public authority, irrespective of exact amount of service rendered to taxpayer in return and not imposed as penalty for any legal offense. इस definition का मतलब क्या हुआ कि tax is a compulsory contribution imposed by public authority. That tax compulsory है और ये हमारा contribution है गवर्नमेंट को, पब्लिक अथॉरिटी को, और ये गवर्नमेंट ने ही इम्पोज किया होता है irrespective of exact amount of service rendered to the taxpayer, and taxpayer cannot demand anything in return for that payment in the form of tax. And this is not considered as any penalty for any legal offense because it is a compulsory payment only and not any penalty. When we look into the various classes of taxes, taxes are classified into two categories: direct taxes and indirect taxes. Direct taxes are paid directly to the government by the taxpayer and the burden of tax cannot be shifted. So this is simply the definition of direct tax, that these are paid directly to the government by the taxpayer and its burden he or she cannot shift to anybody else. Indirect taxes, on the other hand, are the taxes levied on production or consumption of goods and services, and their burden can be passed on to customers. So direct taxes are the taxes which are imposed on individuals and organizations, and its burden cannot be passed on to anybody else. On the other hand, indirect taxes are levied on goods and services, and the burden here can be passed on to the others in the form of customers. Let us now understand in detail as to what are the direct taxes and what are indirect taxes. Direct taxes, by definition, a direct tax is a kind of tax which is imposed directly on the taxpayer and paid directly to the government by the person on whom it is imposed. So जिसके ऊपर ये टैक्स लगाया गया है उसी ने ही गवर्नमेंट को पे करना है, वो किसी और को नहीं कह सकता, वो अपने इस बर्डन को किसी और के ऊपर शिफ्ट नहीं कर सकता. It cannot be shifted by the person to someone else. So ये मैंने पहले ही explain कर दिया. It is charged after taxpayer receives income, and one thing is also clear that direct tax can be paid only when the taxpayer has received the income. Next important thing to understand about direct taxes is the impact and incidence of tax falls on the same person. What does it mean? Impact and incidence matlab the immediate payment is made by that taxpayer and the final burden also lies on that person itself. That person cannot shift that burden to anybody else. So उसी person ने ही पे करना है जिसके ऊपर ये टैक्स लगाया गया और उसी की पॉकेट में से ही ये पैसा जाएगा. ये किसी और की पॉकेट में से निकाल के वो टैक्स का पैसा नहीं दे सकता. The examples of direct taxes are income tax, property tax, gift tax, wealth tax. And direct taxes को regulate करने के लिए there is a body called Central Board of Direct Taxes. It is the governing and administering body. On the other hand, what are indirect taxes? An indirect tax is a tax collected by government from an intermediary, such as a retailer or a manufacturer, who collect it from the person who bears the ultimate economic burden, such as a customer. So this shows that indirect tax can be shifted by the taxpayer to someone else. Means it is imposed on retailers and manufacturers, but they can collect it, they can shift the burden of this tax on the customers in the form of increased prices of the goods and services. Next, it is charged before purchasing of goods. So when we go to the market to buy a good, जब हम मार्केट में कोई चीज़ खरीदने जाते हैं तो जब तक हम उसका टैक्सेस का अमाउंट उसकी प्राइस के साथ नहीं दे देते तो हमें वो प्रोडक्ट नहीं मिलता है. तो ये बिफोर परचेजिंग ऑफ गुड्स हमें पे करना पड़ता है. Then in case of indirect taxes, the impact and incidence of tax falls on different persons. That means as in case of direct taxes, the impact and incidence had been on the same person, but in case of indirect taxes, impact lies on somebody else and the incidence lies on some other person. Means impact is on the retailer or manufacturer and the incidence is on customers. Examples of indirect taxes are GST, excise duty, STT यानी कि Securities Transaction Tax. For regulating indirect taxes, there is a central body called Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs. So this is meant by direct taxes and indirect taxes. This is all in this slide, in this presentation, and the other things we'll cover in other presentations. Thank you.